facts in your clinical interview with the defendant?
Yes.
Okay. Do you attribute that to his antisocial personality disorder?
Yes.
Have a moment, Your Honor. That's all I have this time, Your Honor. Unless the court has any questions.
I have one.
Yes.
When the state asked you whether or not Mr. Jonchuck in our previous hearing here an hour ago suffered from mental disease, defect, or infirmity, I believe your answer was no.
Yes.
Okay. And now your answer is yes.
Well,
Right? I mean,
personality disorders, some people do
hold on a
consider them
second.
that.
But now your answer is yes, he does.
If you consider personality disorder one, yes.
Okay. But why didn't you include that in your answer?
Because for the not guilty by reason of insanity, I don't believe personality disorders fit into that. At least that's been what I have been told in recent times, and that's been on and off, and I don't know that doctors are in agreement on that. Some people say if it's in the DSM, then it is a mental illness. Some people say personality disorders really don't meet that criteria. So it's hard for me to answer sometimes because I really don't know, because I don't believe that the psychiatric community is in agreement on whether or not it is.
Can I ask a follow-up, Judge?
Mm-hmm.
And under the old system, there were Axis 1, Axis 2 diagnoses, correct?
Yes.
Axis 1 would be mental illness, right?
The primary mental illnesses, yes.
And Axis 2 would be?
Have personality disorders and intellectual
And
disabilities.
they don't refer to them that way anymore, correct?
Correct.
Everything's in the DSM now?
Well, everything has been in the DSM, but just the classification now, they just put all the diagnoses all together. They don't separate them out into primary psychiatric diagnoses and then secondary and then medical problems. They don't do that anymore. They just put them all together.
So when I asked you, does he have a mental illness, how did you take that question to be?
Well, I take that to be if somebody has, well, at the time when you initially asked me that question,
Yes, that's what I'm asking.
my clinical characterization was psychopathy. And I know from my training that does not meet the criteria for mental illness for NGRI.
Okay. So because he doesn't have bipolar or schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder, you would say he has no mental illness, correct?
Correct.
But does that mean that he doesn't have a personality disorder or mental health problems?
No, that doesn't mean that.
Does that clear it up at all, Your Honor?
Well, a little bit, and I have one more question. My understanding might be wrong. Would it be accurate to say that to give an opinion that somebody is not guilty by reason of insanity, you could not solely use a personality disorder to buttress that opinion?
Correct. Yes, that's right.
So we're kind of back to the same problem.
May I inquire, Judge?
Sure.
I have some arguments here when she's done with her question.
Okay.
Morning, Dr. Lucera.
Hey, good morning.
You referenced some training you had, correct?
Yes.
The only time you've ever worked under the supervision of another psychiatrist looking at your work was your one-year fellowship, correct?
No, that's not correct.
Right.
Well, counsel, approach, please. antisocial, or some of these other ones, you wouldn't necessarily be high on the psychopathy scale.
That's right. They do not have anything to do with each other really, except for, you know, the criminality aspect, but there's people that have all of these disorders, and they don't have psychopathy. Psychopathy is a very small portion of the population, very small.
All right, Dr. Lazaro, you wrote a report in the case, right?
Yes.
And you included a couple different times where you listed your diagnoses, correct?
I believe that I have one, well, I mean, yes, it's in there multiple different times, yes.
Looking at page 1, you indicate that it is your opinion within a reasonable degree of medical and psychiatric certainty that Mr. Jonchuck is a psychopath, correct?
Yes.
And then he also meets the DSM-5 diagnostic criteria for sedative hypnotic use disorder, severe, correct?
Yes.
Stimulant, cannabis, alcohol, tobacco, and hallucinogen use disorder in full remission, correct?
Yes.
Okay. You agree you did not include antisocial personality there, right?
Yes, that's correct.
You agree you did not include borderline personality disorder there, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Then you, next paragraph down, you indicate that you believe John is malingering his mental illness, correct?
Yes.
And that is because he is a psychopath who stands to gain something from lying, correct?
Yes, I say that in there.
And you then indicate that Mr. Jonchuck does not suffer a mental illness that would render somebody insane, correct?
Yes.
Then later on in your report, you have another section actually titled DSM-5 diagnoses, page 81 of your report, correct?
Yes.
And there you actually put you have a list there. Number 1, you list psychopathy, correct?
Correct, but as we talked about, I believe in a deposition, that isn't really a DSM-5 diagnosis. I should have put that separate, but since I give that clinical characterization so infrequently, I didn't do that there, so that was my mistake.
Right. And you said you give the psychopathy diagnosis so frequently, right?
No, infrequently.
Okay. And we're going to go back to that.
Sure.
The malingering, you put that as a DSM-5 diagnosis?
Yes, it's a V code.
Could you point to me where it is in here?
Yes, do you have your
Yep.
copy? I don't know, pages are probably different, but it's under the V code section, other conditions that may be a focus of clinical attention.
And what page is that?
In my book, it is page 726, where it lists malingering.
$726. What?
I don't know
think
if
I
your,
have a hard copy.
that floppy book may have different pages than the hard book.
I'm sorry, 726?
It's on the very bottom. V code is V65.2, malingering, under the primary header, non-adherence to medical treatment.
Okay. So there is, so this section, to be clear, is titled other conditions that may be a focus of clinical conditions, correct?
Or clinical attention. They're causes for clinical concern. Yes.
Okay, conditions that may be a focus of clinical attention, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then there's subsets of that, correct?
I don't know what you mean by subsets, but
Well,
there are
there's-
many different V codes.
And there is non-adherence to medical treatment. Well, under problems related to access to medical and other health care, there is a subset for non-adherence to medical treatment, correct?
I don't know that that's contiguous. I'm taking them to be two separate entities, but
Do you disagree that they are laid out in an outline format in the book?
no, I don't disagree with that. There's different headers. That's a different header, and then the one under it, non-adherence to medical treatment, is a different header. But until you just said that, I guess I didn't even look at it as two of the same sections. I looked at it as two different sections. I believe non-adherence to medical treatment is a primary header, and I believe the problems with access to care is under problems related to other psychosocial, personal, and environmental circumstances.
Where's that?
Well, it's right ahead of that, so it's on the it's on the previous page. and then it goes on to other circumstances of personal history, then it goes on to problems related to access to medical and other health care. And those V codes are inaccessibility to medical treatment, and then the next one is non-adherent to medical treatment. So they're each different headers. I don't believe that one is under the other, in the sense that I don't believe that that other one encompasses the non-adherence to medical treatment.
Okay. It indicates that malingering differs from factitious disorder, and that the
Yes.
motivation for the symptom production in malingering is an external incentive, where in factitious disorder, external incentives are absent, correct?
That's correct.
And so this is not they specifically suggest that malingering is not a disorder, correct?
I don't know that, it isn't a disorder, it's just a cause for clinical concern.
Okay, and where else is it mentioned in this book?
I believe it might be mentioned in the antisocial personality disorder, but I don't know that for sure. I just know that for sure malingering is its own entity in this V code. It's a V code.
Okay, so not a diagnosis at all.
It's not a diagnosis, it's a cause for clinical concern.
Okay, and then the other diagnoses you provided, those are, you're indicating the diagnoses you attribute to Mr. Jonchuck at the time that you met with him, correct?
Well, they're the diagnoses that he has. These are not just to when I saw him. When you look at substance use disorders, they are from when they started the substance use disorder through the rest of their life. It's sort of like diabetes. Even if your blood sugar's under control, you still have diabetes. It's the same thing with substance use disorders. Once you get one of those disorders, that is continuous, because it can always be, you can always relapse. So they continue to stay there. So it's not just in this one episode, it's his whole life.
All right, let's go to the antisocial personality disorder.
Okay.
You indicated that, well, first off, you do not get, in order to even find psychopathy as a specifier, we're looking at the alternative model of DSM, correct?
I'm not exactly sure even where you're going with that. There is a emerging section in the DSM where psychopathy is a specifier of antisocial personality disorder.
Right.
But in this particular case, I'm not saying it's a specifier of antisocial personality disorder. It supersedes antisocial personality disorder.
Oh.
It's its own entity.
Okay. Where's that?
What do you mean, where is that?
Where in the DSM is it its own entity?
Psychopathy is not in the DSM-5.
Well, it is in the alternative model, correct?
No, it's just a specifier of antisocial personality disorder. It's not its own entity in the DSM-5.
It is only a specifier of antisocial personality in the alternative model, though, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and so there's the actual model that is adopted by the APA, right?
Yes.
What is the APA?
American Psychiatric Association?
Are you a member?
No,
Why not?
because I don't agree with their...
I don't know what this would have to do with the issue.
So there's an actual model that's been adopted, right?
Well, I mean, it's the DSM. I wouldn't say it's a model that's been adopted. It's the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual as an emerging level, because again, when you look at these manuals, as I don't know if you know, but it started out with just DSM, then it went to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's constantly the part of a subject of research. So what the DSM-5 authors did is they put a little section of, hey, sneak peek at what might come. That's what it is. It's not really anything other than that.
Okay, so then going to not the alternative model, the regular DSM.
Yes.
Psychopathy is nowhere in there, right?
No.
Okay.
No, it's not.
And then so psychopathy is mentioned as a specifier for antisocial personality in the alternative model, correct?
Is in this emerging section, yeah.
What is that emerging section called?
It's called Emerging Measures and Models.
Where are you looking?
I'm looking at the title page for it, section 3.
Okay, so that you're looking in the actual DSM.
Yes, I mean, I'm holding that book, yes.
Okay, so, and there you would agree then, under personality disorders, what's your page?
It doesn't have a page on that page. I'm not getting to any page. I just had the primary header page. It doesn't have a number to it. It just says section 3. There's no numbers on there.
You don't have I'm sorry, let me see again.
There's no page numbers on there.
What-
That's what you're asking me
What
for.
DSM is that?
This is the DSM-5.
What's the page number before it?
The page number before that, let me see. The page before that is 727.
Okay, so we're looking at the same section. Flip on the heading of the other pages is alternative DSM-5 model for personality disorders, right?
There is, on page 761, there is a section called Alternative DSM-5 Model for Personality Disorders, yes.
And that is where psychopathy is located, correct?
It is on page 765, under antisocial personality disorder. There's a specifier, and it says with psychopathic features.
All right, and so that is the only. Are you saying that there is somewhere other than right there that psychopathy or the specifier for psychopathy is an option other than right there?
I'm trying to understand what you're asking me, because I never said that it was in the DSM-5, so you're asking me a question that I never gave the initial answer to.
Okay, so your belief is that it's not in the DSM at all.
Well, psychopathy, as the way that I have administered it here from the HARE psychopathy checklist, this is a distinct book from the DSM-5. It's not the same book. It was not included.
Counsel,
Okay.
And they'll let you know somehow, the state will, when you're getting deposed.
Leave your stuff for the moment, and we'll come back and have to get rid of the jury.
And if you have that, the stuff you were talking about, the Publix case with Judge Peters and all that, if it's relevant to this, give it to me so I can read it.
I mean, certainly the court thought it was relevant, it's in his order, but they're not insanity cases. Your Honor is saying you only want to see insanity cases.
For other issues, yeah, but I'll see what it says. If it's pertinent, let me read it so I know what you're talking about. Was his case an insanity case?
Yes.
Okay, well, let me read it.
Where Dr. Lazare testified.
Okay. Let's bring the jurors in, please.
Yes, Your Honor.
So what else do we need to do before 1 o'clock? And the depot will happen, and it will only be as to the change in her testimony, as to no mental illness versus antisocial personality disorder, and borderline personality disorder. Okay, and then we'll come back at, well, I tell you what, let's come back at 12:30, and if the defense has any additional arguments they think they need to make as to the proffer, you can make them, and then we can start promptly at 1 o'clock.
Did I approach on the logistics of the depot?
That's what I was,
Okay.
we were quite curious
About
about
the
the
logistics of what we're gonna do instead.
Well,
When and where?
if you're gonna do it in here, the press has to be out because the deposition is not a public record.